son, Scott, the quarterback coach there, they've done a great job. They've improved Cam as a passer, but it's hard to improve your passing game when you're absent of practice, when you don't have your frontline guys in there to develop that continuity. And they don't have a #1 wide receiver. They are all guys trying to develop, even though Funchess has been there a couple of years. DJ Moore, when you don't have your franchise quarterback in Cam Newton, potentially Wednesday and Thursday practices, he's only going Friday. You can't predict the speed, because you can't simulate that in practice to what it's going to be in the game. You saw Christian McCaffrey. He had an angle, a running back angle, where he goes out to the outside off the tackle and then shoots inside the defender on a 3rd and 12, wide open. Cam leads him too far. That type of timing when you're out of practice is not going to be there. And Cam is doing the right thing. It's not for NFL players to complain about injuries. That's the way it's been. That's the legacy of the league. And it provides a certain amount of toughness for your team, because the team knows that he's injured. Cam Newton has done a remarkable thing. He's meeting with the training staff. He takes the whole training staff out to dinner on Thursday. Well, he has the food catered inside the locker room. People don't know about this because he's been spending so much time with that training staff. He just does that out of appreciation. So Cam Newton might be hurt as a quarterback, but you can see the growth in other areas. And that's what I saw in that press conference, when the overall humility of, man, this game is tough. I've been banged up all year. I'm not going to make excuses. And for people who are broadcasting games, they're not going to make excuses for Cam because it's not their position to be able to do.
I thought we were talking about this before the show. You made an interesting point, which is we've talked a lot about Cam's mechanics and where Cam has a different throwing motion than a lot of guys, and where Cam's footwork isn't up to par with what the very elite quarterbacks are. And you made an analogy about a baseball pitcher and about, we see all these shoulder and elbow surgeries with baseball. We rarely see it with football, but because of the way Cam throws the football, he might be more susceptible to shoulder injuries than your typical quarterback.
Well, he doesn't utilize his gifts. He doesn't utilize his big legs and that torque that you can have throwing with your legs. Because typically, if you're late with the football, it's either I didn't recognize what coverage they were in, or I'm not utilizing my legs and my legs aren't ready. And when you see with Cam, when he tries to force the ball, he forces the ball with his upper torso. So you can see him put a lot of stress on his shoulder, and poor footwork leads to poor mechanics, which leads to poor throwing motion, which lead to soreness, which also lead ultimately to injury. There's a reason why my shoulder is messed up today, is because I played a couple years with a bad shoulder, had surgery on it after trying to play with it. That is part of being in the NFL, and that's what Cam Newton and the Panthers are experiencing this year.
And as a result, they're all but done now from the postseason. I want to talk to you about the Saints. You said something interesting when Chris Caney was out here yesterday. He said, keep an eye on the Saints. I'm not completely sold on this offense. They have not been playing well. And for the 3rd straight game, they definitely did struggle offensively. Did that surprise you last night going up against this Panthers team?
No, it didn't surprise me. They struggled the last 5 weeks. They're all pro tackle Tyron Armstead. He's been out since week number 10. So week number 11 through 15, they've really only played one good game. That was against Philadelphia, a complete game. The rest of the time, they've struggled, and all their numbers have suffered. Michael Thomas has gotten a lot of attention because he's 28% of their offense. Alvin Kamara, he's a big part of their offense too, but after that, they're missing. Teddy Ginn last year was 13% of their offense. Mark Ingram, he was 13%. He's not that. They don't have anyone else contributing 10% to their offensive productivity in the offensive line, which was great. Right now, last night, they lost Max Unger, the great center that they have.
Depth on that line.
No depth. There's no team that has depth on the line, but we forget about the Saints, because when we talk about them being productivity, we talk about Sean Payton. We talk about Drew Brees. We talk about Michael Thomas. We talk about the running backs. We never talk about their offensive line. Their offensive line potentially is one of the best, if not the best, in the league. They have not played up to that, and we've seen that since week 11. The overall productivity has suffered.
They put a major investment in that offensive line starting years ago when they traded Jimmy Graham at the peak of his powers for Max Unger, who has been an excellent player for them. Teron Armstead, we talk about a lot of left tackles. He's a guy whose name had not been mentioned as much, but your friend's a Pro Football Football Focus had him rated as the #1 left tackle in football, and it is a very clear line of demarcation. It's the first 10 weeks of the year, which was 9 games for the Saints, where their offense averaging 37 points a game. He goes out of the lineup. Since then, their offense is averaging 25 points per game. The reason they've been okay is these last 5 weeks, the defense has been extraordinary. Defense was great again last night. In the loss to the Cowboys, the defense was excellent. The thing that I think people need to watch most closely, particularly with Max Unger being hurt and with Teron Armstead not back yet, is the last 3 weeks, Drew Brees has, not forget playing at the best level of his career as he was through the first 10 games of the year. Last 3 weeks, we can show it to you, he's been a different player. His completion percentage is still high, but down from the all-time record. The yards per pass is dramatically lower. He has more interceptions the last 3 weeks than he had in the first 11 games of the season, and that passer rating stat is not lying there. So all of a sudden, when he hasn't had as much time and as much support in front of him, and they've been playing some tough defenses in this stretch, except for Tampa's mixed in there, and they're not a tough defense, Drew Brees has been compromised to a degree.
Two things affected Drew Brees the most. That's that offensive line, because people are getting closer to him. And when you're height challenged like Drew Brees, that's something that will affect your ability to be able to throw the ball and see down the field. And they do not have a #2 receiver. They tried it. They went out and signed Dez Bryant. It didn't work. Went out and signed Brandon Marshall. It didn't work. They are looking for a #2 receiver. Opposite of Michael Thomas, defenses are starting to clamp down on him, not giving him the big explosive game. So that will affect the way they do offense. So the Saints, watch out. These last couple games are very, very important to create some momentum offensively going into the playoffs.
All that being said, Saints